In the first part of this series, we discussed the origin story behind my interest in bodybuilding and fitness. It was a tale of inspiration starting all the way back in middle school and continuing into my time in the Marine Corps. I was dedicated and I was serious about my physique goals. That is, until I got the civilian freedom I had been wanting so badly. It's pretty common for people to gain the freshman 15 whenever they go off to university or college. And just to be an overachiever, I went ahead and gained a freshman 50. And the main reason for this is that I was tired of being forced to exercise in the Marine Corps and I wanted to chill out, man. I was finally done with my time in and I wanted to relax and enjoy myself. And I enjoyed myself a lot. I stopped going to the gym regularly, started eating a lot more high-calorie foods. We're talking cheeseburgers, pizza, chili cheese fries, milkshakes, the good stuff. And I had a blast, honestly, playing tons of video games, doing whatever I wanted, basically. And it was super fun until I started noticing the effects of these changes. I did the most natural thing for an animal to do. I avoided pain and chased pleasure. And it showed. By the time I had finished with my schooling, graduated, and started working full-time as a lab scientist at night, I was weighing about 230 pounds at only 5'10", which is actually the heaviest I've ever been before. And an interesting thing about this time is that this was August 2019. Now, anyone who works in healthcare is probably thinking, oh no. And yes, that's exactly what I thought when, as soon as I started my career in healthcare, the COVID-19 pandemic hit. By the time I had finished my training and started working full-time at a hospital, the pandemic was in full effect. The added stress of working in healthcare during a pandemic just exacerbated my delinquent behavior when it came to monitoring and working on my health. By the time I was only a year into my new career, I was already having to use yummy foods and alcohol to cope with the stresses of the job, which is a nasty mixture that led to multiple negative health consequences for me over the next 2.5 years. I was depressed, extremely unhappy with my physique, and really struggling at work. I desperately needed some tools to help get me through the situation I was in. Ever since I took an introductory course to philosophy in college, I had always had a certain fascination with the subject. So I decided to look into different philosophies to see if there was anything I could use there, anything that could get me out of this pit I was stuck in. I read a book called Meditations by a Roman emperor named Marcus Aurelius. Probably a lot of you have heard of him. And it contained some of the ways in which he thought about and dealt with the difficulties of his life. One of the most important things I learned from it was that there are basically two sets of things in life. There are things that you can control, and there are things that you can't control. And worrying and freaking out about the things you can't control only holds you back from actually taking action and doing what you want with the things that you can control. I have so much more to say about my philosophical journey, but for now, it will suffice to say that I was very, very interested. While I was reintroducing myself to Socrates and just learning about Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, a couple of Stoic philosophers, I found a really interesting subject on YouTube, and I think the first one I saw was actually by a channel with the name of Anthony Magnabosco. And Anthony used a conversational technique called street epistemology, which is essentially using the Socratic method of questioning with everyday topics and especially challenging topics. This SE, or street epistemology technique, was very beneficial when it came to discussing controversial topics or even having an internal debate with yourself, using logic on yourself to see if the thoughts that you have, the ideas that you have, can stand up to scrutiny. Now, SE is a topic, again, just like philosophy, that I could get into videos and videos, hours and hours of discussion about, and I will in the future. I plan on doing that. But for this video, the main important takeaway from SE is that it introduced me to a subject I had never honestly considered before. I watched one of Anthony's videos in which he invited his interlocutor or conversation partner to actually use that method, that questioning method, on him. And the topic that he chose, just because it was something they had discussed a few minutes prior was Anthony's growing interest and internal debate about veganism, which is the diet and lifestyle created around the idea of minimizing suffering when it comes to sentient creatures like animals. This conversation blew my socks off. Every argument that I would have used personally to justify eating animal products and using animal products in general was decimated. All of them destroyed one after another, and I was left with no good reason. And this has happened before in my life. When I find that I don't have a good reason to believe something, it's almost like the tie that I have to it just evaporates, just goes away. So for the next weeks and months, I talked to family and friends and even used SE with some of my better friends and my wife to try to figure out, is this, what is this? Because it's really bothering me, really disturbing me. And the eventual result of all of these conversations was that I was convinced by vegan propaganda. I think that they were right, and the arguments I would have used had all been destroyed. I decided that the propaganda I had been subjected to and the research I had done were just too much to ignore at this point. And so, while I was sitting in my office one day eating a bag of Cheez-Its, I put the Cheez-Its down. That was it. That's the last time I intentionally ate an animal product. This was a big change that had even bigger results. I found that I needed to re-educate myself on nutrition and figure out how to structure a diet. After all, I had been eating animal products with essentially every single meal since birth. And while I was researching and looking into how to build this new diet of mine, I found a couple very, very great resources. A couple medical doctors, one of them named Dr. Neil Barnard, and another, the late, great Dr. John McDougall, who unfortunately recently passed away. Both had a plethora of free and paid information. I consumed most of the free information I could find, including lectures old and new, and even just debates and things of that sort. I learned loads from these guys, and if it wasn't for them and my interest in this topic, who knows where I would be right now. I actually started off, because I had no idea what to eat during this transitional period, I had actually found a YouTuber named Freely the Banana Girl. I now know that she's a very controversial figure, but I tried out the fruitarian diet and it was insane. I ate as much fruits, and I would throw in vegetables as well, but I ate as many fruits and vegetables as I wanted and lost weight every day. I just kept losing weight and losing weight. I had tons of energy, mental clarity. I felt better at work. It was amazing. Eventually, I ended up with a more holistic plant-based diet of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, and legumes. And I still had the same situation. I ate when I was hungry, I ate my fill, and I maintained a lean figure. So freaking cool. In the space of about 18 months on a vegan diet, whether it was the fruitarian or the mixed diet, in the space of about 18 months on this new plant-based diet, I had lost 65 pounds. What a difference that weight loss made for me. I felt more confident, more energetic. My knees, hips, and ankles hurt much less by the end of my shift. The equivalent of a barbell and 10-pound plates on each side had essentially been lifted off of my body. And I felt awesome, felt so much better. And so I decided, you know what? I feel so good, I'm gonna start exercising again. I wanna build my body back up like I did before in the Marine Corps, like in part 1 of the series. I wanted to push myself physically like I had done before. I started doing some lighter volume style training until I read a book called Can't Hurt Me by a Mr. David Goggins. And this book inspired me to push myself, do something I had never done before, do something very difficult. So I decided at that point that I was going to run my first ever marathon. And so I signed up for the Justice Run in October 2023 in Fort Worth, Texas. Found a training program for running your first marathon online and started following it. It was definitely a learning process, getting back into running more than just a mile or two like I had been. But I felt great and I wanted to see what I was capable of. So I loosely followed that training plan until race day came. It was a chilly October morning of the race, and it was just pouring down rain on us. And also, I'd like to mention that the race was delayed for about 3 hours, so I was all hopped up on caffeine and electrolytes, and then I had to sit in my car for 2 hours before the race starts with rain pouring down. But eventually it came time to line up, starter gun went off, and I ran in the rain for 3 hours straight. It finally stopped raining, but unfortunately the waterproofing I did to my shoes and the waterproof socks that I were wearing, they just didn't hold up. I had little prune feet and was in a significant amount of pain, but I was able to pull it off, finish the race. I wasn't in last, which is great, and it was crazy. I just run a marathon in the rain. It was extremely difficult to complete this race, but I did it. And as soon as I finished the race, my brain started feeding me thoughts about what's the next one? What's the next challenge? What are we gonna do next? How are we gonna push ourselves further? So I started searching, and I decided I would go ahead and run a longer race. This time an ultra marathon. I picked the Ramble in the Brambles race, a 29-mile ultra marathon just north of Munster, Texas, full of beautiful valleys and hills and rocky paths and wooded trails. This race was freaking epic. And once again, I trained for several months, doing the best I could to throw in some variation with hills and trail runs. And after several months of training, it came time to take on the most difficult physical task I have completed to date. Running 29 miles through this beautiful vineyard destroyed my hamstrings and glutes, and the only things that saved me on this day were pickle juice, Oreos, and Advil. And the knowledge that my loved ones were still en route when I was halfway through the race, and if I were to bail out, they would show up after driving an hour and a half only to see me as a quitter. And I wasn't gonna let that happen. I continued on. I finished the race, and I didn't even end up in last place. I know, impressive. But that was something I had seriously considered. I was mostly training on paved roads. I did a couple trail runs leading up, and when I got there in the morning before this race, there were some runners out there. There were people that were booking it out the gate, and they were probably back home relaxing by the time I finally finished the race, but I did it. I ran a 29-mile up and down hills. It was amazing. I was floored that I could complete something like that, and I didn't even have rhabdo. I wasn't nearly dead or anything. So I decided at that point, okay, we did that. What's next? What's the next challenge? And there was something about prepping for that race. So maybe something my wife said to me, pointing out that my abs were looking good or something, but I'd been feeling the urge, feeling the itch to get back into physique sports. And so I turned my eye to an old love, bodybuilding. This brings us near to where we are right now. In fact, you can essentially see the beginnings of this bodybuilding journey for me on my bodybuilding prep series here on this channel. I've chosen to take on a natural bodybuilding competition. I found a bodybuilding show that would work with my timeline, and it just so happens to be in August of this year, 2025. If you've been keeping up with the channel, then you will have seen I bulked for quite a while, did a mini cut, went on vacation, came back, and now we are about a month into the full prep for this bodybuilding competition. I've seen so many ups and downs in my life when it comes to my physique and my health, and I've struggled with issues that are likely similar to the kind of stuff you guys are struggling with. But there's a few things that I've learned, a few steps that if you follow them gently, you can achieve the goals you're looking to achieve. Number one, be honest with yourself and what it is you really want. Number two, make a plan and provide space in your plan for the mistakes you are inevitably going to make. Give yourself extra room to breathe. Step three, and this is the most difficult part because plans and goals are usually made when you're nice and cozy, sitting in your office thinking about what you want to accomplish, or like me, you just finished an ultra marathon, you feel like an absolute beast, and so you want to choose something difficult to take on. Well, when it comes to following the plan, that's where the rubber meets the road on this one. But if you can do 1, 2, and 3, then you'll eventually get to step 4, which is embracing the pride and warmth associated with overcoming your fears and persevering. At the time of recording this, I'm about 12 weeks out from my bodybuilding competition, and I'm already looking more muscular and seeing visible reductions in fat. I am so excited to share my progress and strategies with you all as I use this time to pursue my goals. If you want to see this journey unfold, please subscribe to the channel, and I've got a full playlist, like I mentioned earlier, on my channel called the Bodybuilding Prep Series, where I'm starting all way back in, I think November is when I first started recording of 2024. My training sessions, my philosophy about training, why I'm doing what I'm doing, my ideas about diet and how to approach that, cardio. There's so much information to find in that prep series. So I hope you'll all give it a look, check it out. If you enjoy these videos, if you enjoyed this video, please like it. I'll see you all in late August, early September for the third part of this series. And as always, I hope you all have a good one. See you.